What are your core values and have they evolved over time?
Yes, they've evolved over time. I said we're not going to do rainbows and butterflies, but this is going to sound rainbow-ish and butterfly-ish to make up a term. It's love. It really is. I get high off of it. I get high off the love from people. I give it, and my energy is in people.
But is in your day-to-day operations,
Yeah.
that love value, right?
Yeah.
How does that come into play when you're discussing
Yeah.
high pressure points
Yeah.
of what needs to move the needle
Yeah.
for party A
Yeah.
and the representation and the services that you offer?
Yeah. You have to have what I call a come to Jesus meeting as to what it is that you want to achieve.
Let me, sorry.
Yeah.
You can't have a come to Jesus meeting at 25.
Yes, you can.
Welcome back to Between Us and my part 2 of my conversation with Oyango Snell. In part 1, we talked about many aspects of law, leadership, satisfying some of my deeply rooted curiosity because I decided not to pursue law school and getting the answers from Oyango here. And we left off talking about CLOC, which is the organization he is currently with, and bridging the gaps between corporate institutions globally.
Yeah.
So we're going to continue on from there. Thank you for being here with me for part 2.
Thank you.
Now, going back to CLOC, which is where we left off in part 1. Because you're serving, and it's serving the interests of corporations.
Yes. Well, yeah. Yes and no. I'd say the legal industry, because here's the deal. You have the corporate legal departments.
Right.
But you also have law firms who service corporate legal departments. And then you have their clients that are, or their customers that are impacted by that. But then you also have all of the other components that feed into that from service providers. So you have tech providers, accounting and finance, strategy and governance. So you have a plethora of other companies and other industries that are all connected, from technology to the world of finance to the world of legal, where it all kind of comes together. It's not just in one place. It's kind of enterprise-wide.
So would you say when you stepped into this role, into this organization, was one of the pulls was because it aligned with your core values?
Yeah, I think one of those factors that came into mind when I wanted to take on this role is that it was focused on enhancing the practice of law, the practice and business of law, right? Because there's two components to that. There's the practice side, but then there's the business side of law. So from that dynamic, it was very appealing. There was also the attraction of, I like to fix things. I like to find gaps and holes or breaking points and figure out how do we enhance them, how do we improve them, how do we increase our opportunity to be bigger, better, an association. Mm-hmm. And because of my love for associations, this one happened to speak to me, not only because it spoke to me as it related to what its mission was and what we were trying to achieve, but the people that were leading the organization and working for the organization, I had come to fall in love with him as well as we put this thing together and try to bring about change in the industry.
What are your core values and have they evolved over time?
Yes, they've evolved over time. Yes. I don't think 10 years ago or 5 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, I would have led with, or today, I lead with transparency and authenticity. It's important for me to be transparent. It's important for me to be real. It can. There's some...
I've tried to put you in a pickle in part 1.
It can. What I've learned, though, is transparency doesn't mean you have to say everything that you're thinking. Authenticity doesn't mean you have to do and say everything that you're thinking.
That's the new definition, Oyango.
That's what the young people tell me. But for me, this old bird has adopted the definition that it means, as long as I'm myself in the moment. But here's a real example. I was arguing with some of my contemporaries, some of my very close friends, because we got into a debate about code switching, the term code switching. What does that mean, code switching? It gets a negative term to anybody who's African American, who can, in the kind of urban dictionary realm, go and work for someone who's Caucasian or Anglo-Saxon or other and talk one way and then come back to the neighborhood and talk a different kind of way. I call it the ability to communicate effectively, right? I know in certain circles I can get away with communicating in a certain way, or it's the culture or the philosophical approach to communicating one way, versus when I'm in a professional setting, how I communicate. Is I call it talent. You know,
well, in corporate America, they call it segmenting.
Segmenting.
Knowing that audience.
Thank you for some good marketing, some real true marketing 101, right? Yeah, yes. The real true marketing 101. You know, so you know, I enjoy building things with CLOC. I enjoy the team, and you know, we're working on some new things to help this association be a very core, key, pivotal player in the legal industry, and that's what's important to me.
Okay, but we're also talking about like how your values have evolved over time.
So now this is gonna sound, I said we're not gonna do rainbows and butterflies, but this is gonna sound rainbowish and butterfly-ish to make up a term. It's love. It really is. I get high off of it. I get high off the love from people. I give it, and my energy is in people.
But is in your day-to-day operations,
that
love value, right?
Yeah.
How does that come into play when you're discussing high pressure points of what needs to move the needle for party A and the representation and the services that you offer?
Yeah. So
how do you lead with that and not lead with the professionalism?
100%. But here's the deal. Who says professionalism can't be done with love?
Because you've got a deadline to meet and you've got somebody breathing down your neck. Love is out the window, Oyango.
Let me ask you this question to answer your question. What's the opposite of fear?
Success or fear.
Love,
but like, and you said, when you said, I said success is because and I thought of it back to part one when we were talking about, the example came of when you shy away from the chirping sphere, or when you step into the lights of success.
That's fair.
So
that's fair.
That was my
100%. There is no wrong answer. Right. There is no wrong answer. This is not the LSAT.
But love is can soften you.
Can soften. It can soften you. But for somebody that's rigid and kind of rough around the edges, sometimes aggressive, sometimes is too authentic, sometimes too transparent, that love kind of is needed in order to kind of soften things out, right? And I haven't always led that way. I haven't always led with empathy. I haven't always led with love. I sometimes led out of fear. Sometimes, I've led in a way where, I was scared that this impact was going to happen, so I didn't do it. Even though I thought that might have been the right thing to do, I chose to do this because it was safe. I don't want to be safe. I don't want to just get the B+. I want to really, really move the ball forward. If getting that B+ is like that ceiling, and I'm still innovating, I'm still moving the ball forward, so be it. That's the path that I'm chosen to take. But usually it's not. So I've tried to center myself in a room, or at least my mental space, of being transparent, being authentic, and really feeding and giving love in a way that propels me professionally, personally, and all about. One last thing I'll say to kind of put a bow on this. Why are we different at home versus when we're at work?
Because the environment expects us to be performative in the space that we're in.
Exactly. And what I have had problems with and struggle like many people in being performative of when I go to work, I code switch to, or I segment, I'm sorry. I segment into, how can I help you? What can I do? What do you need? How can we make this happen? Oh, well, look, you're looking at it wrong. Let's do it this way. Or, I have a different perspective. Let's work together. Let's collaborate. But when we get with our significant others or person, what, you got a problem? What's your problem?
Yeah.
Well, I didn't do that. I didn't say that. What happened to how can we work together? What's the problem? I have learned, I've not always been this way. I've learned in my more mature state, because we're not talking about age. You say we don't mention age.
Right.
In my more mature state, I have learned, and I'm still learning, how to be authentic in that way of delivering and receiving love in a way, not in a mushy, I'm in love with you kind of way, in an unprofessional way, but love in a sense of empathy and understanding and wanting you, like, I have love for you because I want to see you successful. I'm going to pour into you because I want to see you. I don't want the team or the organization just to be successful. I want you to be successful in the delivery of what you're doing, which will, as a byproduct, help the team, as a byproduct, help the department, as a byproduct, help the organization achieve its goals. So it's all interconnected. And that's I guess that's the concept from a professional perspective as to what I mean by love. How do I pour into my team? How do I give of myself? The knowledge, the sharing, everything that I am capable of doing, and how do I be the empathetic leader that they need in order to follow, right? They make a choice to follow my vision. They don't have to follow my vision. They can protest. At some point, they'll find another place to work, but it could take some time.
Yeah.
They can milk it, right? So I've been guilty of that. How do I be that visionary, empathetic leader that they need, that they want to follow, and that's important to me.
So let me piggyback on what you just said in terms of this has evolved over time.
Yeah, absolutely.
But let's take it back to the young professionals. We remember what we were like when we were 20s.
Absolutely.
And we cower in the presence of authority. Though I love that this generation is questioning that, right? But there's still that fear that when you cower in the sense of when your paycheck is on the line. And so how do you then advise people right now who are on the cusp of all of this and finding themselves to feel just not seen in their career, but building visibility without assimilation? Because assimilation is great, but it can lose the essence of thyself.
I joked, and when you asked me about my values, I joked about it, but I mean, you go back 15 years ago, maybe 20, the answers are different. They're influence, power, money, respect, it's all of the things that's germane to me. How do I make me bigger? How do I have more power? How do I have more money? How do I have more influence? Right? I think the shift over time for me has transcended or transformed rather to the impact that I give out, because I receive that greatness by helping other people become great. Right? So in giving that advice or sharing my thoughts to that younger generation that might not feel seen, that is trying to wrestle with what are their values as they either navigate different challenges or situations in their current roles or industries, is you have to have what I call a come to Jesus meeting as to what it is that you want to achieve.
Yeah. You can't have a come to Jesus meeting at 25.
Yes, you can. But it's going to be a different conversation with Jesus at 25 than it is at 35, 45, or 55. Because your request and your request for guidance is a lot different than it is
and it's
in
okay
those age
to
ranges.
have
And
those.
This is my point. This is what I'm trying to say. It is okay to have it. At 25, it is okay to fail. It is okay to get it wrong. Take the pressure off yourself that you gotta get it right, that it has to be pivotal, that if you don't do it this way, all hell's gonna break out, or You know, you make a mistake, you fail, you fall, you get back up. You know, I think of the nursery rhymes of the time we come out. What was that? Humpty Dumpty fell, he broke his whole body,
Right.
and they put him back together again, and he went, I don't even know the nursery rhyme. That tells you something. But they put him back together again. He got back out there. He got to going. He was sitting on the wall the next day.
Yeah.
How do you put it all together again and sit back on the wall? So when I say, I don't mean this in the sense of tough love. You know, have a come to Jesus meeting and figure it out. I mean, have that meeting with yourself or whatever your spiritual being may be, and develop what you believe your purpose is at that moment in time. At 25, I was not walking around talking about, oh, my purpose in life is to, you know, make life easier for those that come after me. No, I was the me that I was trying to make life easier for.
Yes.
And that's totally okay to be self-centered, selfish, all of the words that it's okay to not, you know, aspire to make some great impact that's going to save humanity. It's okay to not think in that way because, you know, to quote another philosopher, one being Jay-Z, I can't help the poor if I'm one of them. How can you actually help advance people if you don't help advance yourself, if you don't get yourself to a certain point to be able to either, and I don't mean poor in the sense of finances, I mean poor in the sense of whatever it is that motivates you to move forward, whether that's knowledge, whether that's position, whether that's influence, whether that's money and finances. So you have to wrestle with what it is that you're trying to achieve. That's my point. Whether it's a come to Jesus meeting, a meeting with yourself, and identify what that is so you can then start working backwards. And then you can plot it strategically. If you want to be an engineer, what does it take to be an engineer? What are the education requirements? What are the externship requirements? What are the tradesmanship requirements? What do I have to do? Do I have to know somebody? Do I have to be connected? Do I have to get somebody to write me some fancy recommendations in order to get into the best engineering school? And you can say that same thing on any profession. Or do I want to be a tradesman? Like, what's the process? How do I get an externship? How do I go work with somebody and really develop my craft? Like, all of the things that you have to go through mentally is within you. It's not within anybody else. It's within you. And you have to at least make that determination. And if you're going to, even if you fail at it, or even if you change your mind, you get to say, I made that step and I know that that's not what I want to do. And I want to pivot and move in this direction now. And that's okay.
Hearing you speak so passionately, one of the things I also picked up is you said you don't have to be this person who changes the world at 25.
No.
And I feel like a certain pressure, and people are and I love that they're so passionate about what is happening around in the world. But, you know, and you can still make a change, but you don't have to do it every single day. Move the needle within so that you can make an impact, a louder splash
100%
in the world.
I'm no biblical scholar, but the world has been around for a very long time. And it's going to be around for a very long time when you leave it. And I know that there are forces in the world that believe that the world is coming to an end if certain industries or certain chemicals or fossil fuels or whatever the case may be. If we don't straighten up, the world's going to end. Whatever you believe, that's what you believe. My point is this, is that it's going to be here before you. It's going to be here long after any of us that's living leave it. Yeah. So figure it out. Figure out what your purpose is, what you want to achieve, and you don't have to have it all defined. You don't have to know what you're going to be doing at 35, 45, or 50, or 60 at 25. You don't have to be thinking about retirement. You think about it from a financial investment perspective, but you don't have to be thinking about, like, oh my God, counting the change that's there. Think about how you make an impact on your life and the people within your circle that you can help improve or be better. But you don't have to have it all figured out. And I think we do put a a younger generation, they do put a lot of pressure on themselves, and maybe it's our fault. Maybe we put a lot of pressure on them
that
too.
too, and now they have the resources in their back pocket with social media platforms that informs them of what is happening around the world.
100%.
And when the world is burning around you, you
Yeah.
can't help but feel pressure
Yeah.
to do something about it and to bring about change yesterday.
The world was burning in 1985, 86,
know.
87. We just didn't see it in our back pocket, and it didn't give us an alert, like you're saying, every 5 seconds that something else or somebody wasn't tweeting about it
I know,
from
and I
a
think that's
certain
leading to
office.
a lot of discomfort in the young minds, and I do understand that's important, but I say the word discomfort, as you can say, lightly, because it's a much heavier impact that it's having. But that's another conversation
100%.
for the day. But Oyango, today you speak here with so much clarity, because you have the experience, because you've gone through life that has given you the provisions to employ certain strategies and when to pivot and the people in your life. But I ask you is, how did you lead with clarity before you even had power?
Yeah.
And what were those strategies early on that still carry relevance today?
Yeah. This is going to be a novel exercise of one of my Oyangoisms. I faked it till I made it. And what I mean by that is, exactly what it sounds like. I believed that I belonged in certain rooms, so I put myself in certain rooms. And sometimes, here's what I would say to people who are listening. Sometimes it's not through your employer. Sometimes we get fixated that everything that I want to do to grow and develop and be nurtured is through my employer. I might not be seen at work, but guess what? I can go volunteer at our local United Way. I can get on their board. I can chair a committee. I can get active and start doing something. And those were the things that I did. So at work,
you became proactive.
I'm a peon. At work, I'm a peon. I'm the lowest man on the totem pole. But out in the community, I've built myself up because I've been willing to serve. I've been willing to go to the soup kitchen and hand out food plates. I put myself in the position to go and do neighborhood cleanups for various projects. And then I put myself in the position to be the one to call upon when they want a chair of this or somebody to lead this effort or lead that effort. And then before you know, it's like, hey, you'd make a good board member. You've been around for a long period of time. You have the leadership and the vision that we want. So now out in the community, you've built yourself up. And at work, you're struggling, trying to figure out what your path is, right? At some point, they begin to even out.
Yeah.
Or you surpass because of how you're seen, because now you bring additional value that wasn't considered. And it might not happen at that particular employer. You now get to take your talents to South Beach, as another philosopher once said, one LeBron James. You get to take your talents elsewhere and really think about elevating your game. So sometimes I would say you got to look beyond your current circumstances in order to determine or help you determine what that path is.
When you speak about faking it till you make it, does imposter syndrome creep up? Or did it for you in the past?
It didn't for me in the past. I can honestly say, I thought about this very, very deeply over the years when the term came to be more.
It's more recently
more recent. Yeah. Uh-huh. As a former, very, very former athlete, I know when I played defensive back in college and in high school, I played running back and strong safety. In high school, people around me, smash. I was great. I was a hard hitter. I was fast enough to keep up. I got to college, and I realized that the guys from Florida and the guys from Detroit, who was a little bit more hungrier than I was a lot faster than I was, and a lot stronger than I was. So I had to figure out where my spot was going to be if I was going to make this team, right? My point is this, is that there's always somebody better, there's always somebody smarter, there's always somebody faster. The question becomes, what is the value that I am going to bring to the table that's unique and uniquely qualifies me to be in this room. And that can be as simple as my perspective. My perspective is different because my upbringing, my walk of life is different than anybody else in this room. And I'm going to bring that to this conversation because that's the valuable contribution that I can make in order to help the decision be different than what it might be. It's not that I'm smarter than everybody. It's not that I have more degrees on my wall. It's not that I have more experience and I'm distinguished. It's not because I was born into a certain last name. It's not because I'm black, white, brown, yellow, whatever the case may be. It's because I have a unique perspective to bring to the table. And that unique perspective is only within me. And that was my approach. When I say faked it till I made it, that was the approach until it became more than, well, I have more than my perspective to give. I'm actually knowledgeable on this particular conversation from this said experience.
Find something to lead
but
with.
I did, exactly.
Yeah.
So the first thing that I led with is just me. And the imposter syndrome component never crept into my mindset because I was already proactively trying to maneuver against why I didn't belong in the room, so to speak, right? So I went into the room saying, I'm not supposed to be here, but here's what I'm going to bring to the table in order to earn my spot here. And then we're going to deal with it from there versus standing on the outside saying, oh, please, somebody invite me in because I'm not supposed to be in there and I'm a little nervous and I'm a little scared. Now, I understand those who are introverts and those who are extroverts. I just talked about a lot of stuff that extroverts do. Mm-hmm. Hey, I'm here, everybody. Mm-hmm. See me. I'm ready to step up. Introverts, it's a process for them, and I respect that. I respect their process, but they have so much more. They have so much more value to add than people give them credit for. Yeah. I believe, right? And I used to be guilty of that too. A lot of things I say that are bad is because I did it.
But I mean, again, learning from
your mistakes
experience and wisdom
failures.
Comes with experience.
Absolutely, 100%.
I needed you here today and this week rather, because I'm taking the same approach that I don't want to say on camera because I'm trying to bring it to fruition.
Yes.
But, I've spoken about in past episodes that this year has been tumultuous.
Yes.
I have nothing to lose.
Nothing to lose.
Everything
to gain. Yeah.
And with that mindset, I think it was just last week something switched in me. And I said, and I'll speak to you candidly after it's done recording. But I said to myself, Ashleen, we think people are unreachable.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't know until you tried.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here with you, and it was just a social interaction.
Yeah, yeah.
And here we are, and I'm so grateful. Yeah. But in hearing you say that, it has just solidified the approach I'm taking, and I'm getting some no's.
Yeah.
But some of them are not yet.
Not yet, or not at the moment.
Not at the moment, because they're also trying to see how my trajectory is going to be.
Yeah.
But at least I'm visible.
Yeah.
And I think, it took just sitting with yourself, when you have nothing to lose.
Nothing to lose, yeah. Yeah.
Why, just go all in.
Yeah. There's, now, here's what I can, again, by preface this, by not reading any data, by not reading what the psychologists or the scientists have said about imposter syndrome, I believe that there's a sense of anxiety that comes along with being embarrassed or feeling like you don't belong or fit in. My logical intellectual capacity tells me that that's probably logically how people feel as they go through imposter syndrome situations. But I would say that if there's opportunities for people to learn how to cope with embarrassment, they would ask the question that you kind of preface is, what's the worst that can happen? Somebody can say no. That's it. I've got to walk and go to the next one because it's all about the numbers. Yeah. If I get 10 no's, I might get that 11th yes. Or that one yes on the 11th try.
And it's the aligned yes. And I brought up imposter syndrome because we talked about the platform that you love so much. LinkedIn.
Get at me.
At me too. Because I come from corporate America, primarily Bay Area tech companies. Yes. And I hesitated about being this being part of my life, posting that on LinkedIn because
Yeah.
I thought, what are my peers going to say? Because I was so often slapped on the hand for not being vocal in meetings, not always speaking. Mind you, when the CEO of the company just said, you don't always have to speak, you need to listen to respond, and I would convey that. And I would tell my leaders, you're not in every meeting that I'm leading. I have 8 meetings on average in this organization. You're in one of them.
Yeah.
I'm taking a break.
Yeah.
And so for me, I had to get over my fear just last week and say, what? I'm doing something. I'm leading with purpose.
Yeah.
And the girl that they used to slap on the hand for not speaking because they needed volume.
Yeah.
They needed somebody in the team to be loud and regurgitate the same information, whether it made sense or not, just to be heard. It's now being heard by the globe. I hope I'm being heard by the globe. So it's a sweet win. Let's talk about your work with the California Lawyers Association.
Yes.
You've led changes with DEI. It's a big topic right now with the current administration.
Yeah.
So I would like to hear your thoughts about it.
No. No. So diversity, equity, inclusion, and I say the names intentionally because they mean different things. Diversity means difference and respect of difference. That's it. It's a single word that means respect for difference. People from different backgrounds, different things, different. Diversity is different. Remember in the 80s where you had marketing campaigns that marketed sneakers to black kids in urban metropolitan areas. The way that they did that is to get athletes and people who look like the very people that they were trying to attract to buy those sneakers.
But we're offended by that now.
Doll makers took the same approach. So, it used to be, the diversity that they sought in diversifying their marketing campaigns, diversifying your portfolio, looking at different funding opportunities in order to enhance your overall investment strategy, diversifying your talent pool. Remember the phrase where our people are our biggest assets. Remember the corporate phrase that used to permeate throughout the 90s and the 2000s?
It has been so long that I forgot that we used to lead with that.
Our biggest assets. So
now
if your people are your biggest assets,
wow, I forgot
then
about that.
Don't you want people from different ideologies, different backgrounds in order to service the market that you probably dominate in or serve from people from different backgrounds, different walks of life. So conceptually, that's just diversity. We haven't even talked about equity and inclusion yet. That's just diversity, right?
Yeah.
Difference. And equity is that sense of fairness that we talked about earlier, and inclusion is obviously practices and cultural beliefs and different things that include different people from walks of life into various conversations or decision-making processes or leadership opportunities or what have you. So I respect the difference of the terms and don't shortcut it to DEI because DEI itself can be viewed as a movement versus a method. I think diversity, equity, and inclusion is a method to get to fairness and just application of policies and cultural beliefs and bringing together a society from different walks of life in order to move in one direction, so to speak. Not an acronym that represents necessarily just a movement of racial reckoning, which is the way that it's termed.
And I see more of that now. What in your opinion, what are the dangers of that?
I think the dangers are what we've seen. We've seen hatred, we've seen discrimination, blatant hatred, blatant discrimination.
Policies being rolled back.
Civil rights being stepped on. The emboldenedness or emboldening of various certain people in society that come to believe that they may be better than other individuals within that society. So it does us social harm, but it also does us civil harm and human harm. Last I checked, humanity has no party. It's just treating people
a little louder, please.
Yeah. I told you I lead with love at my age now. It really doesn't. Humanity doesn't have this sense of politics that we have,
or divide,
or divisiveness.
yes.
Exactly. It's it goes back to in part one where we discuss my admiration for Harold Washington, who was the first black mayor of Chicago. Seeing his work, or understanding his work, rather, is probably the better phrase to say it. Understanding his work to desegregate some of the civil service jobs and like bring people together. I'm sure there's conversations and things he had in the backdrop that I'm not privy to on how difficult it was, or days he might have wanted to give up, or different things of that nature. But he understood that there was a bigger, or at least he demonstrated rather, that there was something bigger at play here. So diversity, equity, and inclusion in and of itself is more of methods in order to get to a society of fairness and have a just way of application in policies and employment practices, opportunities, you name it. So looking at it from that big, broad picture, I think that there is some missteps politically that bleeds into policy impact on humanity. And that's the sad part.
That is frustrating to see, because people have worked so tirelessly to get these 100%.
Things. I mean, look, when after the murder of George Floyd, and I know some people get in a tizzy because I say he was murdered. Not because that's what I determined that it was, it's because that's what the court said. The court said it was murder. They didn't give him first degree, but they said it was a murder.
Yeah.
And he's gone. And post that, you had a lot of corporations that it was a pendulum switch. Oh my God, let's deal with race.
Yes.
Like this is what happens when we don't deal with an issue. We can't just ignore it and expect for it to dissolve on its own or get better. We have to deal with the race relations in our organizations. We have to deal with segregation. We have to deal with discrimination. We have to deal with how we're treating everybody.
Right.
And it wasn't black versus white, or Hispanic and Latinos versus black, or Asians versus black, or Asians versus white. It was, how do we all coexist in order to service our markets? Yes. It's really just a business decision.
Yeah.
It's a business decision. And unfortunately, we've moved away from people being our greatest assets. I said biggest earlier. I think it's our greatest assets was the actual phrase.
The greatest assets,
yeah, right.
Somebody can correct us.
Biggest and greatest, right? Yeah. Bigger and greater. I know one particular individual who sits in a certain office who loves words like bigger, greater, huge. Thinking about all the ways where we can actually be better rather than talk better. It's one thing to talk with the stick in your hand and carry a big stick. It's another thing to actually be better. I believe
talking is easy. Talking makes you look smart, intelligent, because you borrow words, you hear words from somebody else who sounds amazing, and that words can impact. But movement is important.
No question about it. I'll say this last thing, and I'll talk about real quickly on some of the things we got done in my former role. So it was Dr. Maya Angelou who's quoted for saying, do the best you can until you know better, but when you know better, do better. And we failed to do that, right? So you saw corporations, you saw the corporate sector in mass movement started to think about how we be better as a society. Not how do we cater to black people, not how do we make amends for this murder, but how do we be better as a humanity? How do we help cultivate society? Yes, we have to make up for some wrongs. Yes, we have to talk about it and think about it and realize the impact psychologically and economically that a certain race of people have had. But you can do that for any group if you want to. Right. You can do that for rural white folks in Appalachia. You can do it for African Americans in metropolitan areas that are descendants of slavery. You can do it for Latinos and Hispanics that came here to escape not just poverty and economic situations, but the potential situations where they were facing death and hunger, and any other immigrant society that came here because we are a nation of immigrants. And that if you pin it back, That's the reason why everybody came here, in order to have a better life from wherever they came from. So now that I'm off my political soapbox, you made me do it.
No, but I appreciate it. These are dialogues we need to have.
Yeah.
And, you know, oftentimes the dialogues are being had, but
Yeah.
it's so passionately leaning one way or the other.
Yeah. Look, I've been fortunate to have diversity, equity, and inclusion a part of every role that I've had, because I've mostly either been the only or the leader. And in those particular situations, I've been in a very privileged position. Rather, I'm the only or the leader.
You have said privilege in part 1 and part 2.
Yeah.
How are you not... did you ever carry any angst when you weren't represented and you say, no, I chose this path, it's a privileged path.
Yeah.
And why do you use that word?
Yeah. No, not really. No angst or frustration or anger in the regard, but a sense of searching for understanding, not as to why, but as to when will there be more, right? How and what's my role in helping to do that? So I think the anger is eliminated by the fact that me and people like me have work to do to help as many as we can.
Use the word privilege, it doesn't lend itself to the humbleness and humility that you have spoken and shown of like the work I have to do.
Let me put it in this way. I'm privileged to be in the position that I'm in. So my debt is to pay it forward, right?
Got it.
So there's not many, run the numbers. I don't know what they are, but there's not many African American males from the South Side, city of Chicago, of, murder capital on any given year, drug infested, coming from the neighborhood of Inglewood and Hyde Park where I held, where you couldn't walk down the street without seeing a busted crack pipe and 20 crackheads and somebody from another gang or a shootout or something of that nature. So statistically, when I say I'm not supposed to be here, and we talk about, we talked about the rooms that you entered in, and how did you develop the confidence and the courageousness to want to do that? I dreamt bigger than my current set of circumstances at all times. And it's that younger childhood that I was faced with, and by the grace of God made it out of, that grounds me and gives me that sense of humility, but also recognize the privilege that I'm in to be able to sit here and be an MBA, a JD, a lawyer, a former lobbyist, an executive of 2 organizations, a law professor. Having that background is a privilege in the sense where I owe a debt to make sure that not people see me, Oyango, but that they see people like me either in themselves or people that they have to work with, so they have a sense of respect for them. So that's what I mean by the privilege. Yeah, because we when we all read White Fragility, we learned the term white privilege, right? And it was actually reading that book where I wrestled with it a little bit. It's like, okay, yeah, there's definitely white privilege. I got white friends. I know their privileges, or at least some of them. I know how they get things that I don't, or get out of situations that, I question whether or not I can get out of.
Yeah.
But be that as it may, I also understood that I was unique too, that I had privilege too. The question was that how did I use my privilege? Just like we leaned on them and said, how do you use your white privilege? How do you use your white privilege for good? What are you doing to help, fight against discrimination and perpetuate good in all humanity? Well, as an advocate or an ally, I say, I turn the question around. How are you doing it from whatever walk of life you come from? Because we all have privileges in some regard. The question is, how do we use our power for good. As another scholar once said, his name was Spider-Man, with great power comes responsibility. How do we use that privilege for good?
I appreciate you so much, because I really hope that, anybody who listens into this can take your statements and stop, if they've been hiding in the shadows.
Yeah.
To come
Step
out.
forward. Yeah.
Step forward.
Yeah. And make a
There's
difference.
space for all of
Yeah.
us.
Yeah. No question about it. No.
And that's something I had to wrestle with, and I've been very forthcoming with the way I showed up online. Not my best self, but I thought this is something I can look back on.
Right.
And there's many of us who come from backgrounds, and I sit here too, Oyango. I come from a small island in Fiji, very far away, and I don't have to do this. I don't have to have conversations. I can do more lighter stuff, but I feel passionate about these topics too.
Yes.
And be able to inform people, educate them. But it goes back to what the value I share with you is, I have to do more. If not me, then who?
Yeah.
And also be a face for somebody to help motivate it. I come from an island where there was only one university.
Wow.
And I sit here in California having worked,
it's 20 in a 5-mile radius.
Yes, and life is still lifing.
Yeah.
But I sit here because I have a roof over my head.
Right.
And I've got work to do.
Yeah.
We've got work to do.
Yeah.
I could sit here and cry about, and I do, about how bad life is. But then you get up in the next hour and say, well, I'll continue crying, but right now we got work to do. Let's take a time out from crying.
Yeah. You get your Humpty Dumpty on. You put yourself back together. You didn't even need the horse's man or whatever it is to put you back together.
But thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Also, in part 1 we talked about lobbying and all the various roles that you have had. What has been the common thread for you in these transitions?
Yeah. I think there's several. I'll say influence and the ability to make a difference. In my role as whether it was general counsel or executive of an association, or even on my own when I worked as a solo practitioner and worked for government, I've always been able to try to do the right thing through the resources that I had. And try to advance community over profitability in some regard. And sometimes it's great when they are in sync. I'll give you one very small example. When I was working at a law firm in Columbus, Ohio, I was representing the life and health insurance industry, and I'm talking big giants, Fortune 20 companies. And I'm working with a partner on the issue, and we are fighting some legislation. We are trying to create some legislation that will stop this fraudulent scheme that was happening around the country, but we were dealing with it in Ohio. The fraudulent scheme was defrauding the insurance companies. Okay, so let's get this clear. The fraudulent scheme was defrauding the insurance companies. So you had sophisticated people who got together came up with this scheme that was legal to to defraud insurance companies. And in working with a group of lobbyists, working with lawmakers on both sides of the aisle, some are still personal good friends of mine to this day because of this battle, we were able to get this legislation which ended this practice that these security financial investment folks were doing. Now, here's the byproduct of that. I just told you a story on how the insurance company got to keep his money. That's not warm and fuzzy at all.
No, it's not.
The byproduct of it was the fraudulent scheme that was being perpetuated was taking the insurance policies of seniors. So seniors would have nothing to give back to their family because this third party who sold their securities over and over and over is benefiting when that person dies.
I remember that scheme.
Yes, it's called stranger originated life insurance transactions.
Yeah, I remember it was widely talked about.
Yes. So every once in a while, you get something that you're working on for corporate interest that actually impacts real people in a positive way. So that's what I meant earlier in part one, where we talked about wrestling with representing big corporate interests and, being able to sleep at night.
But here you mentioned you used the word influence,
Yes.
right? So when you are, and this is for corporate, when you do government work,
Yeah.
they say you have to play politics to move forward. How did you navigate playing politics without compromising your core principles?
Yeah.
Because it's easy.
It is.
And I say easy in the sense, taking on the lens of business perspective.
Yeah.
Of when there is a great benefit, some of your principles may be compromised, but you can still sleep easy at night.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned too that in part one, a great number of people fall into that bucket.
Yeah.
Because you slave so hard in this profession.
Yeah. I'm very fortunate that I have not had to really face any true compromising position one way or another. I'm sure if I sit long enough that there were some that teetered. But I will say this. There were companies that necessarily didn't represent my values that were part of that representation chain, right? So how do you, I guess in order to kind of come close to the situation and put myself in that box of dealing, how do you deal with that tough, difficult situation that feels compromising in some way? How do you navigate your way out of that?
But you have said time and time again that you were in spaces and places where you were not represented, or you didn't see Oyango represented.
Absolutely.
So when they're dangling that carrot in front of you, wouldn't it be an easy yes? So how did you still stay true? Because you mentioned in part one, you got in this profession to make money.
Yeah.
And that was a driving factor.
100%.
And obviously it evolved over the years
100%.
based on what you saw, and then you found your purpose.
Yeah.
But, when these moments are presented and you're fresh, you're easy.
No, 100%.
And pardon me for, correct me, but
yeah.
they could see as someone easy to
manipulate. Yeah,
thank
100%.
you. Because there's not many of you, of your skin color, my skin color in there.
Yeah, we call those tokens where I'm from. Let's just be frank with what we're talking about. The token mentality takes the carrot that's dangled because of either fear or comfortability.
Or an opportunity.
There is the inconvenience part that we talked about in part one.
Yeah.
When change is happening and you're forced to make a decision one way or another. I think for me, it's been more about, it didn't matter what carrots were dangled, because I was always, I don't say always, I have been strategically in charge of my own destiny as far as my career trajectory is concerned.
It takes a strong mental exercise and conviction.
Does, but let me go back and say how I think people who don't even come from where I come from are uniquely qualified on their own to be able to do it as well. It's first answering the question, where are you trying to go? Now, where I was trying to go I became an attorney at 30, so I didn't go straight through, so I was 30 years old. So where I was at 30 years old and what my, 30 to like 34, I think I was at the law firm during that period of time, and representing some of these big corporate interests that we talked about. And young enough still, because I hadn't practiced any, right? But I was there for a cup of coffee, right? Easy to say, hey, you want this 6-figure income, bro? Like 80 hours slaving it for this guy, right? We know you don't agree with, but they're one of the clients, so we got to get it done. And I never had that type of compromising ultimatum, but in the sense where, and here's another part of that. I don't know if sometimes I was presented with what even was perceived to be an ultimatum because of the novice, or I wasn't in the room or wasn't around to be able to know. Maybe I thought that was a joint decision that we all came to, so maybe the manipulation could have worked in that regard, right? I will say though that I although there was never any blatant compromising decision that I had to make to take the carrot vis-a-vis keep my job, so to speak, my paycheck, you know, and compromise myself or my values in any way, shape, or form. I think there are some things that I learned as a young lawyer, and well, things that happened to me as a young lawyer, and as I got older and realized and leaned on more of the professional ethics of things that I saw, things that I heard were not probably unethical. They were unethical, which I had a duty and responsibility to report those actions and didn't. So, that process of learning and understanding and growing in the profession is something that I would say comes close to that compromising position, because what happens once you blow the whistle? Mm-hmm. Are you protected? Do you lose your job? Are you forced out? Who do you talk to? So I think
a lot of layers that you have to wrestle with.
I think that I was searching harder because I wanted to be responsive to that moment, because a lot of people go through what you described in your question as,
yes,
do you want to keep your job and get a paycheck, or are you going to do X, Y, and Z, right?
Right.
It wasn't even do X, Y, Z or else. It was exercising that discernment and professional judgment of understanding the infractions against the profession. Because if they're an infraction against the profession, then they're an infraction against the public. Because lawyers are entrusted to represent the public.
Who's correcting these infractions? Who's
the state
policing?
Bar. The state bar. The state bars throughout the country. The state bars. It starts with the state bar. So it starts with the state bar, who is or Supreme. Sometimes it's the Supreme Court. In Ohio, the Supreme Court is the licensing division. In California, it's a state bar, but it gets its authority ultimately from the Supreme Court. So it's we're a self-policing profession. No different than doctors or others who, yes, you have a board that oversees it, that can take your license or suspend you or some type of reprimand. But, ultimately that's the process, so to speak. But it goes back to what, just going back to the core of the question of just how do you navigate through that situation? And what I was going with, anybody can do this. I didn't have some special conviction or some special unique qualities. I just knew where I wanted to go. At 30, I wanted to be in public office. I wanted to run for Congress. In order to run for Congress, I needed to run for the state Senate seat that was coming open. In order to run for state Senate seat, I needed to really, really build my brand and portfolio up to be able to genuinely say that I'm a viable candidate, knowing that I'm running against 20 and 30-year veterans in politics. And so it didn't matter what carrots people dangled at me, because I knew what I wanted to achieve. And it wasn't holistically about the money, which I only thought about at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old of wanting to become an attorney. So I could be like one of the fancy lawyers on Perry Mason or on LA Law or The Practice or any of the other shows that I watched growing up, legal shows that I growing up. So from that point of view, if you have that trajectory, at least that understanding, you can begin to work backwards as to what it is that you need to accomplish and what it is that you need to achieve in order to determine what's the right approach to deal with those types of issues.
Do you think leadership must be earned through adversity? And I think we grew up with that sort of sentiment. I could say I did to a certain extent, that if you don't go through adversity, if you don't go through some of the bullying at work, then did you really earn it?
Yeah. I think leadership can be learned through adversity, but I don't think that it is earned through adversity. Because, some people, you mentioned it earlier, some people who go through adversity in a sense of, can have mental, psychological impacts to an individual that either makes them shrink so down, so below what they're capable of doing, to where they can't even display the leadership qualities that's needed or that needs to be seen, so to speak, in order to be chosen as the leader. So I think that leadership through adversity, there's learnings that come along with that. But I think people earn their leadership stripes through service. And I don't mean community service in that regard. I mean service to others. Even service is part of your profession, no matter whether you're building widgets,
Yeah.
or if you're podcasting, or if you're a lawyer, or
even
a
like a
doctor,
cook,
or even
like
a cook. Yeah,
you're
just
in
like
service.
yeah, just
We're
just
all
the
in
just the
service.
traditional everyday jobs.
Yes.
You know, the clerk at Home Depot that we had to go to this morning and exchange some paint. And they didn't have to exchange the paint because it's paint and you bought it.
Right.
But she recognized my pain right now. It's like, I don't want to be out of $200.
Right.
And they took care of me. So it's everybody's in service. I think through that lens, people grow and cultivate their leadership traits and then grow as leaders. But not everybody is the leader in the front. I talked about it earlier, or talked about it in part one. Some people are leaders from the side and from the back, and they have different roles. Leading from the front, sometimes you are the decision maker and the galvanizer and, stirring up the troops, and you're also the spokesperson. But you also have to be the motivator, and you also have to be the person that empathizes, leading from the side. Sometimes it's coaching, sometimes it's participating and playing your hand and playing your role and helping move the thing forward. But leading from the back, you're cheerleader. Yeah. You are sponsor. You are mentor. You are elevator. You are motivator. You are pushing people to the front. You're speaking for them when they're not in the room. You're doing all of the things that's necessary in order to help those people move to the front of the line or even past you, beyond you. That's the role of leading from the back. Knowing when to display those leadership characteristics and qualities is what makes one great leader.
Yeah, agree. I definitely agree. What, in your opinion, leadership trend or value do you think will define the next decade?
Curiosity.
We've stopped being curious, don't you reckon?
I do. We have stopped being curious. We start knowing it all. We know everything we think we know, or we chat GPT it, or Copilot it, or Gemini it, or whatever other AI technology you can think of. The reality of it is that we have stopped being curious, and we've relied on devices to analyze things for us.
Well, now if you ask the why, then you're frowned upon unfavorably if you dig deeper and ask critical thinking questions.
Right. I agree with that. And I think artificial intelligence and the technology components can leverage our ability to still be curious. It's not that I'm not saying it's either one or the other. I'm not saying it's be curious or lean on technology and don't be curious. I'm saying be curious and leverage technology to enhance your curiosity. Yeah. So curiosity is getting a little bit deeper than, hey, ChatGPT, give me a list of these people or these situations or these things. And then you get the list. Why is this the list? Because there's a World Wide Web that ChatGPT or other AI tools have scrubbed. Why is this the list? Who's not on the list? What am I missing? Yeah. Like, you see that level of curiosity? Let me dig a little bit deeper beyond this tool has helped me get a great start. Let me dig a little bit deeper. So that's that sense of curiosity that I'm speaking about. I think the next generation of leadership will be defined by that curiosity, because technology will only improve, get faster, get better, and the tools that are out there. And if we don't leverage and lean into them, I think we're going to do ourselves a disservice in various job markets by not doing so. So I think that it's going to define not only leadership, but the next set of leaders.
Amazing. In hearing you speak, what came to my mind was, these are the things, we don't speak about age here, but we grew up with. And it's amazing. I
knew I'd get you.
But it's amazing. It's amazing that we kind of have to revert back to it. And it's great because you're helping bridge the gap of carrying forward with what the new thing is. But using it sensibly.
Yeah. I love being around people who are about 80, 70, 80, 90 years old, because they're on the second cycle of what you just defined, or what you just described, rather. There is this full circle, so to speak, right? Yes. Our generations kind of ebb and flow, and we go back to certain things. Bell bottoms were played out when we were growing up, right? You know.
And they resurface every so often.
But we went into a baggy jeans phase, and then we went into a tight jeans phase, and now we're back to bell bottoms. I'm old enough to see that transition. I can tell you all the jean commercials that I used to watch growing up to get there, but I don't know where I'm at. I don't know what jeans to put on these days.
The blueprint that you have, I guess, in essence, talked about of leadership and tapping into yourself and how you have led. It is so remarkable. But, Oyango, there are still spaces where Black people are not leading.
Yeah.
And I hate the fact that I have to be cautious about even saying Black people because people take offense to it, and hopefully you don't. I apologize if it did. But the young people, you had a conviction, you had a strong mindset.
Yeah.
A lot of people, it can waver, and that's okay because life comes at you fast and strong. How can we champion for the minority so that they know that they are capable of not just being in that room because they deserve it and they need to be at shoulder to shoulder, but also then go further like you are. You're a public speaker on global stages now. But you got through it because you saw differently, and you said, I'm not a byproduct of my environment. But you're one in 100 that thinks that way. How do we bring the masses together for success?
No, I appreciate the question. It's one that I've faced in a different environment. I take your approach as friendly. That approach was not.
I mean, I'm passionate about this.
Yeah, exactly, and you should be. Here's just some thoughts that I would share, though, just genuinely, authentically, just from the heart. I am not the representation of the African American males or African American people per se. I am a representation, right? And in that regard, we talked about the privilege aspect and all that. I don't need to be redundant on that, but in recognizing that privilege, it's important for me to address these types of conversations and have them. I don't support the theory, and I know this is not what you were saying, but I wanted to communicate it. I don't support the theory of pull yourself up by your own bootstraps, right? Because that's what educational various segments of educational philosophy tells you. They show you the Martin Luther Kings, they show you the Booker T. Washingtons, they show you the Harold Washingtons, they show you now the President Barack Obamas, they show you the Oprah Winfreys, they show you throw your black person, your favorite black person you want to throw in there, your Denzel Washingtons, your Magic Johnsons, Robert Johnsons, and Robert Smiths, and they show you these people, and then they say, well, these are producers from the African American culture and race. Why can't little young boys on the south side of Chicago or the south side or west side of Los Angeles or Detroit or New York, Brooklyn, Bed-Stuy, any of the major Baltimore, any of the major cities, New Orleans, that you can think of where there's a large concentration of African American people, why can't these young people get their act together and look at these examples as a blueprint, as a byproduct? And I'll say this in this way: the psychological effects and economic impact of the American slavery institution that further perpetuated to the industrial and then civil rights era in the 60s, which then perpetuated to more systematic and institutional racism of the 70s and the 80s, is centuries and centuries of depression. So it's easier for people from minority race groups to succeed because of the opportunities that exist now that did not exist in 2010, 2000, 1990, 1980, right. 1970, 1960 for sure, and you keep going. But it is still difficult nonetheless Now, when you add that complexity on top of I have to eat, I have to feed my children at 16 years old that I shouldn't have had, but I have them, so I got to deal with it. I have to help mom or dad with the rent or the mortgage or whatever it is may be. What do I turn to because the $6, $7 McDonald's job ain't gonna help me get it? And it says I have to have this degree and that degree and this degree in order to even be considered for the $25 hour job or the $40 hour job. So what's my process? How am I even going to get to school, even if I can go and get that degree? So everybody didn't have a John West, who is a ghost to me now, not because I ghosted him, but because me and my friends cannot find him. But for John West, I would not have gotten into college. He personally made calls to get me in college after I got kicked off the football team for getting into some trouble in high school. And we couldn't find him through social media. They probably didn't have a Greta Chamberlain that told them in the 6th grade, little boy, you can be an attorney. I'm going to help you stay out of trouble. Come to the library. Let me put the Negro Souls of Black Folk in your hand. Let me put the biography of Booker T. Washington in your hand. Let me put the biography of Marcus Garvey in your hand. Now I'm going to make you lead the debate team for the 6th graders.
We're not even talking about these people anymore, though.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Because that's, critical race theory? You can't talk about black people and their accomplishments in these days. So, but the deal is this, is that there are systemic and institutional challenges that impacts that blueprint, right, of success. So it's hard for somebody to just say, oh, he made it, so I can make it, when they got to deal with the daily challenges that they have. Now, that's not everybody. There are some people who can and do it different and do it even better and do it even more efficient and more effective, regardless of what, race they're in. But particularly when it comes to people of color, which obviously, well, I guess not, I'm passionate about, very passionate about. I think that there are more opportunities now than there have ever been. I think that there's also more discrimination and more racism and more institutionalized racism than there's ever been. But for the era of slavery, when you exclude that part, people say, well, you still have civil liberties that you didn't have in the 1960s and the 70s. That's true. But last I checked, I saw the National Guard rolling down the street with their guns out, picking people up or questioning people.
Yes, it's scary times.
So,
but
there's that.
Let me ask you a leading question, if I may, and this is from my deep-rooted curiosity based on what you just said, is how do we make a dent? Because you talked about these things, the depression, the slavery, this conditional fear that's been passed 100%. Down from generations. And it's
conditional fear, and I got to add one that the psychologists will say, it's a big word, self-hatred.
Yes, and so and they've made strides to combat that, right? But you're still looked upon unfavorably because you don't belong in the same section of town where I'm at.
Right.
And so, how do we, and there's no right answer. I'm just picking your brain.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
What do we do to, make a crack in that glass?
Yeah.
And because when you
100%.
crack these, you can glue them together, but it's never gonna be the same.
Yeah. In my opinion and just my thoughts, it's doing what we can one by one. There is no there's no policy decision. There's no policy answer. I mean, I'm pretty sure there's policies. There's a lot of policies, actually. That's a false statement. Strike that one from the record. There's a lot of policies that can be done to help alleviate the situation. I can think of a number of them. But
policies are only as good as
the people who implement them and execute them,
because
right?
It's just a paper to feel good.
It can be, right?
Yeah.
It's the execution of those policies that really, really help make a difference. I try to take the approach of just doing everything that I can within my sphere of influence, but I do think that it's important to be that representation and show younger generations and young people a better and different way beyond their current circumstances, whatever they may be, and really show them that the route to success in this society is through two ways: education or entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship and education.
Nobody growing up, my time would have said entrepreneurship.
No, absolutely, it didn't exist.
No,
it didn't exist. Like, you want to go,
and it was frowned upon. Like, go be a doctor, be a lawyer, be something safe.
Go work for somebody.
Yes.
Go work for somebody. Right?
Yes.
Yes, you're a lawyer. You could technically say you work for yourself, but most lawyers do. I mean, you work for somebody.
Yes.
Even engineers, doctors, whatever the case may be. Right. So it's education and entrepreneurship. Those are the two ways to success in this society. And I say this society for a reason. But, the two E's, if you need an acronym or something, or I forget what you call them, but a way to remember things, a pseudonym. Yeah. You need a pseudonym. It's the two E's: education, entrepreneurship. And those are the two ways out. Those are the two ways out of poverty. Those are two ways out of homelessness. Those are two ways out of bad health care. Those are two ways out of, pick your problem, you name it: education and entrepreneurship. And I will lean heavily on the entrepreneurship because that's $1 today. Education is $1 promise for the future, but you got to spend $1 in order to make that $1. So
I love all these gems. Thank you. And this conversation obviously can get lengthier. I was just picking your brain because it's somebody said to me recently, they said, Ashley, there's a lot of and this is earlier episodes of women on your podcast, and that too women of color, and I didn't think of it when I approach guests. I'm vetting them, and I said, what, good, because I don't want somebody to come and open up my YouTube and say, I don't see representation, or you see a people of my similar color excelling in different niches, but no one's having like this
real meaningful, thorough conversations, and honest and honest conversations, man. I applaud the passion. I think that it's important to have these voices and share successes, but also failures, and also just perspectives on how we can be better in society, how we can help people, how we can help uplift people, how we can help try to solve problems. I wish I had a silver bullet to tell you how to, help younger people, particularly young African American males, see that there is a better blueprint than some of the lives that they are sometimes forced to employ. Yeah,
because decades have gone by, and there's changes.
But
there isn't. And the world is your oyster. If we could just.
Well, if I always say, if somebody wanted to give me $1 billion, I'd fix it. But, I'm only saying that just to
Who's listening?
I'm only saying that just to get the $1 billion.
Who's the billionaire in the world that's listening right now?
I'd spend the rest of my life trying to fix it. Let's just put it that way.
Amazing. I'll finish this sentence for you. Great leadership.
Great leaders always ask questions. And this plays off the curiosity. But the reason why I think that's important is because of what I said earlier, even about lawyers. We don't walk around like an encyclopedia knowing everything, all things regarding the law. But or even as an executive, when people come to us, they come to us to solve a problem. Sometimes it's a crisis. Mm-hmm. Sometimes somebody's just mad that somebody sent them a nasty email.
Right.
But to them, it's the most important thing of the day.
Right.
And as a leader, you have to do two things. You have to first be empathetic to their situation. And then you have to coach them on how to deal a little bit better. I used to get constructive feedback from my mentors, coaches, and supervisors that I have a hero complex mentality. I know. At first I thought it was a compliment. It's like, oh, great, I suit up, ready to go. Put me in the game. Until I realized what they were doing, or what they were saying, was I'm handicapping other people from growing because I'm just solving everybody's problem. Somebody comes, oh, no problem, we'll fix that. Oh, you got a problem with this? Oh, we'll fix that. It's like sometimes people don't always come to you for you to fix their problem. No, sometimes they're coming to you for you to help them understand how they can fix their own problems. Or they don't want your help at all. They just needed an ear to listen to so that they can work out their minds or work in their minds as to how they plan on attacking the situation. And then sometimes they actually are asking for advice and counsel as to how to proceed. So it was that process of learning that all of those are leadership characteristics that I needed to master. When are people coming to me for guidance? When are people coming to me for me to make a decision? When are they coming to me to give them the answer that they need in order to help them move forward? Not necessarily making the decision, but empowering them to move forward. Or when they just needed me to shut up and open the two things God gave me instead of the one thing God gave me.
Right.
And use it most judiciously and effectively, which I've failed at many, many times over, which is probably why our podcast is the longest ever in recorded history.
I love that you call yourself out, because I call myself out a lot, and it's amazing having accountability on camera for masses to hear.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
Yeah. Well, there you go. My authenticity and transparency at work.
Lastly, as we wrap this up, you said you have 2 kids.
Yes.
In this world that we live in, we mentioned earlier in part 1, I believe it was, that it's constantly burning around us.
Yeah.
When you see the world right now, and as they grow up, what would you equip them with?
Yeah.
And understand now you've worked your way to a place of privilege.
Yeah.
So making sure that they are aware of their privileges, but also of the lack of.
Yeah. Yeah. Discernment. My role, in my opinion, as a father of 2 African-American boys, is to teach them discernment, the difference between right and wrong and the consequences thereof. And I think through that, it is from that place of understanding the privilege that they share of, living in a gated community and having a passport with more stamps than I had before I was 35.
Because you paved the way.
Yeah. And I remember a friend of mine invited me to the suite at the Sacramento Kings basketball games, and he brought his son, and I had my 2 boys who running around the suite, playing around, doing things that you're not supposed to do in a suite, but they're enjoying the popcorn and the hot dogs and all of the food. And he just happens to be another African-American brother. And we kind of had an epiphany as we looked at each other, watching them run around in this suite. And we thought, damn, this is amazing.
Right, of course. Yeah.
Like, I didn't go to my first anything game until I was probably 30. When I cracked the 6 vehicle. I was like, oh my God, yeah, exactly. But no, it's not me, it's them. Like, I've been to plenty of suites since then, but this little guy who's 10 and 8 running around in a suite. I didn't go to, literally, I grew up in Chicago. I didn't see Michael Jordan ever play in real life. I only saw it on the tube, on TV. I don't even know if people know what a tube is. But I would say discernment. Discernment is the most important thing that I think that I can, from a knowledge and historical perspective and teaching perspective, that I would like to give to them. And mainly because I got most of it wrong my entire life, and I'm still trying to, claw my way out of some of the consequences from some of my own actions, and realizing the difference between right and wrong, and how we move forward, and what we can do to be better, and how we continue to be stewards of service in whatever capacity that we're in, whether it's professionally speaking, personally, or serving in the community. I no longer segregate those worlds. I think that they operate in unison, and I am who I am. So why am I not all of them? Why am I not the same person in all of them in order to have the greatest impact?
Amazing. On that beautiful note, thank you so much for joining me here today on this episode. And really showing through your work how leadership can transcend, and also hopefully serving as an inspiration and motivation to someone out there. Oyango is living proof that if you put your mind to something, you can do it. He has so candidly shared the beginnings that he came from.
Yeah.
And next week, or by the time this episode releases, he would have already been at one of the biggest disruptive legal forums in Brazil. He's traveling the world over to give words of wisdom, what shall I say,
Yeah.
and help bridge the gaps, not only professionally, but to help motivate and inspire
Yes.
people out there. So thank you so much for joining
Yes.
me on this episode of Between Us. I'll catch you in the next one.